Picture this: a kitchen sink, a stream of cloudy milk-white water spiraling down the drain. It happens in millions of homes, every single day. Nobody thinks twice about it. But here is what almost no one realizes. That murky water swirling into the sewer carries more phosphorus, more magnesium, and more potassium than most fertilizers sitting on garden center shelves right now. The kind of fertilizers that cost $15, $20, even $30 a bag. For the next few minutes, everything changes, because this video is about to reveal a kitchen scrap formula, built on centuries of forgotten farming wisdom, that has the power to double a garden's harvest in just 14 days. No chemicals, no expense, just one overlooked secret hiding in plain sight. Stay until the end, because the most important step, the one that separates a thriving garden from a pest-infested disaster, comes at a point most people never expect. Part 1. The Great Fertilizer Illusion. Why do so many experienced gardeners, people with decades of dirt under their fingernails, still struggle with yellowing tomato leaves, stubborn peppers that refuse to fruit, and roses that lost their glory years ago? The answer might be surprising. It has almost nothing to do with skill, and everything to do with a quiet deception that took root in the middle of the 20th century. That was when large agricultural corporations discovered something enormously profitable. They learned how to synthesize 3 nutrients: nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, the famous NPK, and sell them in concentrated artificial form. Bright plastic bottles, heavy bags, bold promises printed on every label. The message was simple: your soil is broken, only our product can fix it. But something was left out of those advertisements, something the soil scientists knew, yet the marketing departments buried. Excessive synthetic fertilizer does not just feed plants, it slowly dismantles the living ecosystem beneath the surface. The beneficial microbes, the earthworms, the fungal networks that plants actually depend on for long-term health? Chemical salts poison them, season after season. Think of it this way. A synthetic fertilizer works like a sugar rush, a sharp spike of energy followed by a crash. The soil gets weaker, the gardener gets more frustrated, and the only apparent solution? Another trip to the garden center, another bag, another $20 gone. That cycle was never an accident. It was a business model. But what if the real answer was never on those shelves at all? What if it was already sitting on the kitchen counter, being thrown away day after day without a second thought? Part 2. The miracle pouring down your drain. Walk into any kitchen. Watch someone prepare rice for dinner. The very first step is always the same. Measure out the dry grains, pour in fresh water, swirl it around and rinse. The water turns a deep, milky white, and then, straight down the drain it goes. That cloudy rinse water is not just starch runoff. When water passes over raw rice, it draws out a dense concentration of nutrients locked inside the grain. Phosphorus, which builds strong, far-reaching root systems. Magnesium, the very atom at the heart of every chlorophyll molecule, the substance that turns leaves deep green and drives photosynthesis. Potassium, iron, calcium, manganese, all of them dissolving into that humble, milky liquid. This is not a trendy internet hack. For centuries, rice farming communities across Asia understood this. Rural villages in drought-stricken regions kept their crops alive using nothing but the water left over from washing the day's rice. Ancient farmers treated it as something precious, because it was. And now, modern laboratory analysis confirms what those ancestors knew all along. Rice wash water contains measurable levels of the exact minerals that commercial fertilizers charge a premium for. The difference? This version is free. And it has been flowing down kitchen drains in every neighborhood, every day, for generations. But before anyone rushes off to pour a bowl of rice water onto their tomato plants, stop. Because the next part of this story carries a warning that most gardening advice completely ignores. And skipping it is exactly how good intentions turn into dead plants. Part 3. The fatal mistake nearly everyone makes. Here is where the story takes a sharp turn, and this is the single most important moment in this entire video. The instinct is obvious. Save the rice water, carry it out to the garden, pour it directly onto the soil. Simple, right? Wrong. That one move, using raw, unfermented rice water straight from the kitchen, is the exact mistake that sends thousands of home gardeners spiraling into frustration every season. And it is the reason the big fertilizer companies never lose sleep over kitchen remedies. Here is what happens. Raw rice water is loaded with complex, unbroken starches. When poured onto soil, those starches form a dense, sticky film across the surface. That film blocks oxygen. Roots need oxygen the way lungs need air. Without it, they suffocate, slowly, silently, invisibly. But the damage does not end there. That layer of raw starch becomes an open invitation to one of the most despised pests in home gardening, the fungus gnat. These tiny black flies detect decomposing starch the way sharks detect blood in water. Within days, they swarm the soil, lay eggs by the hundreds, and their larvae begin feeding directly on tender root tissue. The leaves yellow, the stems go limp. The gardener assumes the problem is a lack of nutrients and reaches for another bottle of chemical fertilizer, or worse, a toxic pesticide. The cycle continues. The corporations profit. The garden suffers. But there is a way to break that cycle. A single overlooked step that transforms raw rice water from a plant killer into one of the most powerful organic growth formulas ever documented. And it requires nothing but a glass jar and exactly 72 hours of patience. Part 4. The Golden Alchemy of Fermentation. Patience changes everything. In gardening, in cooking, in life. And right here, in a quiet jar on a kitchen counter, patience is about to perform a small miracle. When cloudy rice water sits undisturbed at room temperature for 48 to 72 hours, something remarkable begins. A population of lactic acid bacteria, the same family of microbes responsible for yogurt, kimchi, and sauerkraut, wakes up and goes to work. These bacteria consume the raw starches. The very starches that would have suffocated roots and attracted gnats? Gone. Digested. Broken down into simpler compounds the bacteria can use as fuel. As they feed, they drop the pH of the water into a mildly acidic range, and that slight acidity acts as a natural shield. Fungus gnats and harmful molds find acidic environments hostile. They stay away. The pest problem is solved before it ever begins, but the real magic happens at the molecular level. During this 3-day window, the bacteria begins synthesizing a naturally occurring plant hormone called indole acetic acid, IAA for short. This is the same growth signal that tells roots to branch, to stretch deeper, to multiply their tiny absorbing hairs, and pull water from the soil at an accelerated rate. At the same time, these beneficial microbes unlock phosphorus and potassium that are already present in the soil but trapped in forms plants cannot absorb. The bacteria convert them into soluble, plant-available nutrients, delivered directly into the root zone, right where they are needed most. Day 3 is the peak. That is the golden window, the moment when microbial activity, hormone production, and nutrient availability all reach their highest point simultaneously. Wait too long, past 4 or 5 days, and the bacteria exhaust their food supply and die off. The liquid loses its power. The timing matters. 3 days, not 2, not 5, 3. Part 5. The supporting cast. Bananas, eggshells, and onions. Fermented rice water alone is already a game changer. But to turn it into something truly extraordinary, 3 common kitchen scraps step in to finish the job. First, banana peels. There is an old gardening myth that says burying a raw banana peel under a rose bush will make it bloom. In reality, a raw peel sitting in soil usually just rots, attracts rodents, and creates a slimy mess. But the myth has a grain of truth buried inside it. Banana peels are packed with potassium, the mineral responsible for transporting sugars into developing fruit. More potassium means sweeter tomatoes, heavier peppers, and bigger, more vibrant flowers. The key is not burying them raw. The key is letting fermentation do the work. Second, eggshells. For years, garden centers have sold expensive calcium-magnesium supplements to prevent blossom end rot, that heartbreaking, dark, sunken patch on the bottom of an otherwise beautiful tomato. Countless gardeners have also been told to add Epsom salt to fix it. But here is a detail the labels leave out. Blossom end rot is a calcium deficiency, not a magnesium deficiency. Epsom salt is magnesium sulfate. Adding more magnesium to soil that is already low in calcium actually blocks calcium uptake at the root level, making the problem worse, not better. Plain eggshells are nearly pure calcium carbonate. Crushed and added to the fermentation jar, they dissolve slowly and deliver exactly what the plant needs. Third, onion skins. Those dry, papery layers that go straight into the trash after peeling, they carry significant concentrations of sulfur and phosphorus, both essential for root strength. They also contain natural antimicrobial compounds that discourage common soil-borne pests. Adding a small handful to the fermentation jar layers one more level of protection into the formula. 3 scraps. 3 problems solved, all from the same kitchen trash can that gets emptied twice a week without a second thought. Part 6. Crafting the Master Potion. Now comes the part worth bookmarking. 5 steps. 1 glass jar. 14 days to visible results. Step 1. The gathering. Find a clean glass jar. An old pasta sauce jar works perfectly. Take the peels from 2 or 3 bananas and chop them into small pieces. Crush the shells of 2 or 3 eggs. Pull the dry outer skins from 2 or 3 onions. Place all of it into the bottom of the jar. Step 2. The wash. Measure out half a cup of uncooked white rice. Pour in about 2 cups of fresh water, filtered if possible. Swirl the rice with your fingers until the water turns deeply cloudy. Pour that milky water directly into the jar, over the peels and shells. One important note: if using tap water, let it sit in an open bowl overnight first. Municipal tap water contains chlorine, and chlorine kills the beneficial bacteria that make this entire process work. Step 3. The weight. Place the lid on the jar but leave it loose. Do not screw it tight. Fermentation produces gas and the jar needs to breathe. Set it in a warm, dark corner of the kitchen. A cabinet shelf or a pantry works well. Then, simply wait. 48 to 72 hours. After about 2 days, a slightly tangy, sour smell will develop. That is the signal. The lactic acid bacteria are alive and actively working. Step 4. The dilution. After 3 days, strain the liquid through a fine mesh or cheesecloth into a pitcher. Discard the solid scraps into an outdoor compost pile. What remains is a concentrated biologically active liquid. Do not apply it directly. At full strength, the acidity can burn delicate roots. Dilute it, 1 part of the fermented liquid to 10 parts of fresh water. That ratio is important, 1 to 10. Step 5. The application. Take the diluted mixture out to the garden in the early morning, before the sun climbs high. Pour it gently around the base of each plant. Tomatoes, peppers, roses, herbs, even indoor houseplants. Morning watering gives roots time to absorb the nutrients before the heat of the day and allows the soil surface to dry, which further discourages gnats and mold. Apply once per week for consistent results. Part 7. What happens next? The 14-day timeline. So what should a gardener actually expect to see? Within the first 3 to 4 days after the first application, the leaves begin to shift. A deeper, richer green spreads outward from the center veins. That is the magnesium and iron moving into the plant's system, supercharging chlorophyll production. By day 7, the stems feel firmer. The base of the plant thickens. Underground, new root hairs are spreading through the soil, reaching further, pulling in more water and more nutrients with every passing hour. By day 14, the difference becomes impossible to ignore. Flower buds multiply. Fruit begins to swell noticeably faster. Tomatoes hang heavier on the vine. Peppers that stalled for weeks suddenly push forward. Roses put out new canes with a vigor that has not been seen in years. No synthetic chemicals. No expensive store-bought products. Just rice water, kitchen scraps, 3 days of patience, and a garden that remembers what healthy soil is supposed to feel like. There is something quietly beautiful about this kind of gardening. Every saved peel, every crushed shell, every cloudy rinse of rice. It is a small act of faith, a belief that nothing in nature is truly waste, that the simplest things, given a little time and care, hold extraordinary power. Maybe that is the real harvest. Not just the tomatoes on the vine, but the peace that comes from working with the earth instead of against it. Here is the challenge. Find that old glass jar, save those peels tonight, wash that rice tomorrow morning, give it 3 days, then walk out to the garden, pour that sweet, tangy elixir into the soil, and wait. 14 days. That is all it takes to see what generations of gardeners before us already knew, that the most powerful thing a garden will ever need was never sold in a store. If this felt useful, share it with someone who loves their garden, a neighbor, a friend, a grandchild who might not know that the best things in life really do come free. And if this is the first time here on Rooted in Grace, welcome, subscribe, and let's keep growing together. Until next time, may the hands stay dirty, the harvest stay generous, and the heart stay full.